Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here. In this video, I want to do a demonstration on how I read a chart. I want to try and explain to you a bit more about the things that I don't usually show when I read a chart. And as a demonstration, as an example, I'm going to use my own chart. If anyone's curious about my chart, well, now's your chance. Share my screen. All right. So yeah, I don't mind sharing my chart. It is slightly uncomfortable, but somewhat, I don't know. I guess part of me enjoys it as well. But in any case, regardless. Okay, so first thing, you have the chart, obviously. First thing I'll do when I look up a chart is I'll check it to see if there's any asteroids that make sense. And just note them. This is Vesta. It's also in Gemini, 8th house. Pallas is conjunct Mercury. Juno's in next about 10 degrees from my moon. And for whatever it's worth, I'll just either leave them up for a little while or get rid of them. They complicate things. They make they add a lot more to look at, and some of them are just, I don't even know, like I haven't bothered to really even research them very much, but I'll just check to see what they're doing. And so here, I mean, I'm going to take some of these away, but just for example, like, okay, Ceres is actually a personal, it's more of a personal planet. It's a dwarf planet. And it is, I can't remember where it's orbited, but it is closer to the Earth than a lot of the other asteroids. And it's quite large. It's larger than an asteroid. It's considered a dwarf planet. And Ceres has a relationship to the mother because it's like Ceres was the mother of Persephone, and Persephone got went into Hades and then got held captive there by Pluto, and then she managed to come out, but she made a deal with Pluto that she could spend half the time in Hades and half the time up above, and that's why we have the growing season where half the time we can grow crops and half the time we can't. So it deals with cereal, deals with mother, deals with nurturing. In any case, like, you can take note of it. This is 11, so 11, 11, 11. So it's relating somewhere in between my moon and my Mars and my Venus. There's a nice pattern there, sextile and two semi-sextiles. And Ceres in Cancer, actually I do have, like, if you want to get really granular about a person, you can look at these and make sense of it. And I do have like a caring, nurturing nature, especially with my own child. I like to cook. I have a strong connection with food, so maybe that's part of it. It's in the 9th house, so I have maybe that relates to my philosophy about food and nurturing, which seems accurate. But I'll get rid of it for now. It's not super important. But let's see, Black Moon Lilith in the 7th house, close to my Mercury. I mean, maybe I like Lilith type women. I don't know, maybe. I mean, I guess I am attracted to women, so maybe that plays into it. Sedna, right on the descendant. I'm not sure about that one. I'd have to do a bit more research, but I've read the Sedna's pretty far out there, so it tends to be much more of a spiritual type planet, dwarf planet. I think it's farther than Pluto. Not sure. In any case, Vesta, 8th house, so adding somewhat to my 8th house stellium. It's not really a stellium, but 8th house planets. I know I also have Varuna. There's another asteroid that's not here. listed here, but that adds something to it. Then Pallas Athena. If Pallas Athena is connected to Mercury, I think that makes sense, usually in a chart, or if it's trine, that might be also having to do with it, because Pallas has a relationship to Mercury in the mythology of Medusa. When Perseus goes to defeat Medusa, Hermes and Pallas Athena aid Perseus in defeating Medusa. Hermes gives the sword of discernment. The sword is the thing that cuts off the head, but it's, in metaphorical terms, it's the ability to discern, and that's what Mercury is, the logical mind, to have discernment and discrimination, to be able to divide things into this and that, and Pallas Athena gives the shield of reflection and strategy, that he can reflect and not look directly on her. And actually, what's really interesting about this combination is that Algol, which is Medusa, is 25 some Taurus. So my Mercury is exactly conjunct Algol, and Pallas Athena is right there. So I tend to think this gives me really good discriminating ability against potentially dangerous things. And I do, I don't stick any kind of needles in my arm, whether recommended or not recommended, and that has worked out to my advantage. I'm very cautious. I don't take any pills. I could talk at length about that, but I don't want to get myself into any further trouble with YouTube. But I'm very discriminating and careful and cautious, and I know that there's a lot of danger out there, and I tend to avoid it. So I think that's quite helpful, this Pallas there. So that Pallas and Mercury work well together. Vertex is just interesting. I'll just take note. It's conjunct my Venus, so perhaps relationships play a significant role for me, because Venus is ruling the 7th house. Vertex tends to become activated and becomes like there's something like destined. It's like a destined point or something. Okay, so let's remove that. So I'll look at that, right? And I'm going to leave Pallas there because I think it's significant for me. It's not always significant for everyone. Depends, obviously. Mainly if it's conjunct Mercury or in a trine or sextile with Mercury. Perhaps if it's conjunct the sun or the ascendant or even the moon, then maybe as well. Okay. Then I'll look at the sheets here. Obviously, it's going to be different for different astrology programs, but this can tell me a lot. I like to look at this section, dignities and orrery, because the first thing is I'll look at the declination. And mostly I want to look for out of bounds planets, and I don't have any out of bounds planets, but I do have, my moon is 0 degrees declination. That means right in the middle when the planets follow the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the path of the sun. And the sun's spiraling around, and it goes between 23 degrees north to 23 degrees south. 23, I can't remember, it's 17 or 27. I'm always a little fuzzy on the details, but somewhere around that range. But if it's 0 degrees, that means it's right in the middle, and that means it's the most balanced. So my moon tends to be quite balanced in the middle of the road. So if a planet is 0 degrees, that's something to look at. If a planet is 23 or above, that's also something to look at. Everything else is like fairly normal, right? Then I look at the speed, fast, slow, retro, stationary, and you can also look more in detail, look here, travel. Then my Mercury, I know because I've studied this a lot, my Mercury is quite slow. 17 minutes. Mercury is a very fast planet. And the closer to stationary, the more powerful it's going to be. So my Mercury is certainly not the slowest. It's not the most stationary, but it is quite slow. And we can look at that in more detail But also the retro planets obviously are going to show going against the grain, right? Definitely like a what's the word? Individuating force, a force that allows a planet to become more individualized, because it doesn't want to follow the crowd. It wants to go against the grain, against the crowd, against the norm. You know, if Mercury's retrograde, these people are very disagreeable, right? If Venus is going against the grain, they like to be dressed in, you know, their own style, like completely not going with the trend, right? Things like that. You know, Jupiter obviously is going to be dealing with religion. You know, they might have a very unique religion. Saturn, they might like to go against the law, right? And then the outer planets are going to be even more fully individuated, like spiritually going against the spiritual norms, because these are more spiritual planets. So you can see my three outer planets are retro. So I'm not going with the crowd on a spiritual level, religious, philosophical, spiritual. I mean, that would tend to be Jupiter, but Jupiter's a little more mundane. The outer planets are a little even like more, I don't know, refined. So in any case, I like to pull up my dignities just so I have that by my side. And then there's some other things you can look at. Obviously for prediction, there would be certain things. I can look at my progressed lunar phase. I'm just showing you this, you know, if you have this program, or even if you don't, just so you can understand. Then I look to the date. Okay, we're in between here. So it's like, okay, the progressions, I don't know if you know, a lot of people know about the progressions. They show how the planets evolve over time. The sun moves 1 degree per day approximately, but if you extend it to the years, then, you know, each year the sun will move 1 degree and the planets will move relative to that. And then you look, main thing is the moon phase. So my moon is going towards new moon. See, in 2027, I'll have the new moon. And that means I'm in a winding down phase, a quieting phase, a more spiritual phase. When there's the new moon, that's like the ending and then the new beginning. But it's a very quiet time. When it's a full moon, let's see, my last full moon was 1982, and I was six years old. That was full. And then when I was 21, it was new. Oh no, I'm sorry. Duh. When I was 35, it was full. So that was a very social time for me, from new moon, from age 21 to 35. That was a very outgoing time, worldly time. Even though other factors were in play, that was still like, I was out in the world, I was doing stuff, I was building relationships. And then since then, it's been waning. That was a waxing time. Now it's waning. And I've been going much more inward, and that'll continue until 2027, at which time I'll start a new phase. Another interesting, you can look at, I like star aspects. So like my North Node is conjunct a Crux, which is a very occultic star for, you know, for astrology or occult awareness, and that's very exact. Sun conjunct Rigel. I don't know. The stars, you know, sometimes they make a lot of sense. Other times it's like, Rigel, I heard, is a star of fortune. I do not have, I mean, quite the opposite. I have no money. Let's put it that way. I mean, it's really bad. But you can, you know, if you want to look at the stars, I don't know why Mercury is not coming up here, but it is conjunct Algol. And so there's that. All right. If I want to take a closer look, to see how close to station it is. Mine is 3 days, my Mercury. So that's pretty slow, right? And I've mentioned before, I had a friend who was born, I think I can't even remember if it was 1 day or 2 days before. And I think it was 1 day. So his Mercury is even slower than mine. And the amazing thing is that, like, he's actually more like, I used to be really good at, I'm still good at drawing. I just don't have that much interest in it. But like, I could draw very exactly. He can do like exact replicas of things. He's also an excellent guitar player, right? Obviously his houses are different, so it's going to be in a different house. But yeah, also, but a very stationary, very slow Mercury and Taurus. So excellent with arts and artistic things like that. So when planets are stationary, they're powerful. Right? Okay. For instance, like Michelangelo had a stationary Venus. The more stationary, the more powerful. And then you just want to take a look at the broad look at the how the planets are. Obviously, mine are they consider like shapes. Mine is like a bowl shape. All the planets are in the upper half. This is much more about public concerns, career, worldly events, social, political. If it was all down here, it'd be much more about home, arts, building, family, friends, that sort of thing. But it's not, right? So I tend to be very, concerned with worldly things, worldly affairs, right? Astrology plus politics and social things. I'm constantly worried about like what's going on in the world, right? But just generally, that's how you look at it, and look at the, red versus blue lines. Generally, is this person more talented or more, like having to work really hard to develop themselves? And I got some of both, but definitely a lot more red than blue. So first, usually I look at the sun. I mean, you can look at take note of the ascendant, just take a note of everything, but like I'll start with the sun and the house and the sign, the conjunctions and the aspects. So obviously Gemini, 8th house, Venus. So, for astrology, obviously I don't need to research my own life. Although I can research it by looking at my astrology chart, but and that's what got me into astrology. But for I'm not going to go obviously too in depth into all the potentials, because we can do that in different things. This is more about how to read the chart. But so like, yeah, obviously astrology, sun in the 8th house is going to be interested in personal psychology, right? Which is very, there's different kinds of astrology. Some people can be much more academic astrologers. Some people can be much more relationship astrologers, personal astrologers, like where they're, really just about working with other people. I am about that because I have, quite a loaded 7th house, but also my research. 8th house has a lot to do with research. And and Gemini is so curious. That's why I love to do celebrity readings. I love to read everyone's chart. It's almost like I get to see them on the inside. And that's very much an 8th house thing. It's like diving deep into the psychology, and the Gemini is so curious. It's like wanting to understand it in a very intellectual way, right? And Venus obviously shows that it's my guilty pleasure. It's like, ooh, what does their chart look like? I want to look at everyone's chart, basically. It's like just for fun, even. If I meet somebody, I'm like, oh, I wonder what their chart's like, right? It's the Gemini curiosity. So yeah, Venus very much plays a role in that as well. It's not just sun. It's my personality, my ego, my pride, my star shining ability is in the 8th house in Gemini, but also my joy, my pleasure, right? Yeah, and what was I going to say? Sun in the 8th house is not good for shining in the world, because the sun is where we shine. So like if a person wants to become famous and they have the sun in the eighth house, it's going to be difficult. It's not like it can't be done. You can find movie stars with eighth house sun, but not that much. And they're going to tend to play either like more sexual roles or more like heavy, like maybe a spy role, or like a fighter, or like like a secret agent, or somebody who's controlling the scenes, controlling the from behind the scenes in a secretive way, right? So that sort of thing. Sun conjunct Venus is loves luxury, loves the Venus things, tends to be, less motivated, to be honest, less motivated towards action and activity, because the Venus wants to be indulgent, happy personality, likable, very nice, very good relationship to Venusian things, feminine things, beauty, arts, that sort of thing, but really likes to have pleasure as a big part of their life. Now, you might think everyone likes pleasure, everyone likes food and drink and comfort, but some people really are workaholics. They love to be, just working all the time, or whatever it is. If it's Saturn, it's going to be a very restricted kind of person. Mars is very motivated, very action oriented. Jupiter is very expansive, huge personality, huge egos, right? And the Venus are very, it can be very beautiful. I tend to be more beautiful when I had a full head of hair, when I was younger. Also because South Node is in Taurus, and that was activating the Venus. But yeah, eighth house also brings in a lot of relationship with death and rebirth, which I do have, which I've talked about before. I'm not going to go really too much into that, but if seventh lord is in the eighth house, then there is potential for partners to die. That happened, so that's unfortunate, but also, inheritance could be. But you have to take everything into account. So then I would look at, so the main thing with the house is what planets are in the house. So I have Sun and Venus in the eighth house, but then also I would look at the aspects, right? Neptune is opposite Venus and somewhat the Sun as well. And so fantasy, delusion, dishonesty, lies, deceit, drugs, alcohol, all these things can play into my persona, my life, right? Like I've attracted plenty of times like sort of gullible type things, like where some people will lie to me or take advantage of me, or Venus often relates to relationships. I'll get into relationships and in a delusional way, and I'll think a person's one way. I'll be like, all starry-eyed, and then later come down the line, I'll realize, oh, I made a mistake. They're not at all what I thought they were, right? That's unfortunate, but it happens, right? Neptune also relates to mysticism, spirituality, and so that also plays a role in my oppositions, like squares, take time. Oppositions can play out in real life, with people, relationships. I mean, squares can too. Oppositions don't always start off. I mean, oppositions can be good and bad. Like man and woman are kind of opposite, so they can be relationships, oppositions, right? But they can be any kind of relationship, not necessarily romantic, although could be, especially with Venus, but with Sun opposite Neptune. But that can also relate to a sort of relationship with spirituality or delusion and drugs and alcohol, right? And it can go different ways. The opposition is going to initially bring out the negativity, the negative sides, right? But eventually, as I learn to integrate that, and that's the whole point of difficult aspects, we integrate these difficult aspects, then it becomes a healthy connection, relationship, right? Building that circuit, it takes a little bit of work to build that circuit so there's a good flow. Then it's more like spirituality, creativity, imagination, even like spiritual connections. Neptune can be like intuitive, predictive type stuff, good for astrology. Yeah, that's that sort of thing. Neptune, it has a very, very high level of spirituality when it's well aspected or well developed. It's obviously in the second house, it's not so good because of loss of money, especially with the difficult aspects. Neptune in the second tends to lose money very easily or give it away. There's just like, it's hard to hold on to money because Neptune is loss. And yeah. So those are the aspects. Sun is, has a semi-square to Saturn and Chiron, and it's part of a, so this is a midpoint. Sun is the midpoint between Chiron and Saturn. So there's a square here, right? And so this square shows that like I run into authoritative opposition, authoritative resistance with my relationships, which tend to be, could be chironic. I might sometimes I'll attract a chiron, a down and out sort of rejected, wounded type person, and that will not go well with the authorities in my life. And I'm stuck in the middle. But Sun semi-square to Chiron also shows that I'm a bit of a outcast myself, a wounded reject. Definitely there's that playing into it. And the Saturn square Sun shows resistance or difficult relationship to authority and parental figures or elders, father, and as well as Saturn square Sun can be like quite hard, right? Quite rigid, authoritative, but like not necessarily in a healthy way, especially initially. Right? So these are the aspects to the Sun and Venus. Certainly a lot going on there, right? And a lot to integrate and make work for me. If I make them work for me, they can be excellent, but it takes time, right? It takes struggle, and life is often a struggle for all of us. But then I would also look at the Lord of that house, which is Mercury. And Mercury is in a mutual reception with Venus, although it's not by degree. And you can see that here. It's, Mercury. My Mercury gets a bunch of points, 9 points, and mutual reception with Venus. Because Venus is in Mercury's sign, Mercury's in Venus's sign, but not by degree. But still, there is that trading energy. And when there's a mutual reception, then the energies are like spinning around, circulating. And so like Venus, which is arts and beauty and aesthetics, and Mercury, which is expression and communication and words, then they're mixing. And I that was very strong. Like way before I knew anything about astrology, I loved words. I loved poetry. I loved playing with bold words. And when I was younger, because South Node, first half, arts and writing and poetry and creative stuff like that was very much in my wheelhouse of things that I like to do. I went to art school. I was always doing that sort of thing. A lot of my arts involved words, so like word and art, so that the energies are trading. So it would be a much stronger connection if they had a better degree relationship. But Mercury is also mutual reception with the moon. It's a bit off by degree, but it's still there. And that's by exaltation. Moon is exalted in Taurus, Mercury is exalted in Virgo, right? And they're trine. And so that's quite a strong relationship as well. And it shows a healthy ability to express my heart, my innermost feelings. And that's good for art, for poetry, for writing. Mercury in the 7th house also wants to communicate with others. And so like for this kind of thing, that's important because it's like, I don't want to just write in a journal to myself, right? And I'm not going to just write a book where it's just me writing a book. I don't like that kind of thing. What I like is communicating with other people. That's Mercury in the 7th tends to be that way. I like writing letters to people. I like talking to people. I like communicating with people, whether it's like on a video or actually, in person or doing readings for people, that sort of thing. All right. That's the seventh house needs people to activate it, needs those relationships, the personal relationships. Right. And so that also, Mercury is bringing in the eighth house. It's also bringing in the 11th house. So social issues, groups, networks, politics, internet type stuff, technology, and all the heaviness of the eighth house. So, explaining astrology, psychology, and all of that. That's what I like to communicate about to people. So that's why doing readings, it comes very natural for me. If I do an astrology reading, it's just very, that's why I do it. I can do it. I know how to do it. I like to do it. It's my astrology reveals that I like to do it. And it's important for me to communicate with other people about eighth house and 11th house things. I don't do so much 11th house stuff not in readings, although Virgo is very analytical. So, obviously I can bring that element in as well. And then the Jupiter and the South Node too. So you have to look also at the nodes and how old they are, how old the person is, right? Generally speaking, it's gradual. It's not like an exact thing, but 42 is the cutoff date. That's what I like to use. Below 42, South Node is more activated. After 42, North Node is more activated. So I can tell you when when I was younger than 42, I had a lot of friends, I had a lot of relationships. I was very social. I was very artistic, creative, and I was all about others, having other people in my life, having girlfriends, attracting people. And that was all very, I was actually much more emotional in the past, or at least like emotionally expressive, I guess you could say. And Jupiter was more so like, unfortunately, I'm just going to be really honest and blunt about it, but Jupiter is really my second house as well as my fifth house. And so since I've gotten older at 42, like the second and fifth house of finances, resources, and fun, games, romance, they've dried up. South Node tends to dry things up, right? It activates it when you're young and you think, oh my gosh, like if you have South Node Jupiter when you're young, it's like, hey, life's wonderful, everything's cool, everything's great, everything's Jupiterian. Jupiter brings success, it brings expansion, especially in Taurus. Tons of physical, I had a lot more money when I was younger, mostly from my grandparents, but and friends and social life and everything. I was a lot more insecure because my North Node wasn't activated. I was strong. I was not as I tend to be a lot more porous when I was younger because I was easily influenced by other people, but it was just a lot more social and active and all that, and money and fun and romance and all that, friends, girlfriends, social, all the Taurian good things. And then when my North Node got activated, I just really became much more independent, alone. Even if I want to have kind of personal relationships, they don't go that way. It's not in the cards, not right now. It's not that it can't ever be. And I don't want to say like, people, if you have your North Node in your first house, you're never going to have another relationship again. No, it's not like that. You can, and I probably will, or at least I hope so. But it's not going to be the main thing. And you have to look at the ascendant as well. But so that's the thing. First is what planets do you have in a house? Second, what are the aspects? Third, what's happening with the Lord of that house? So that was the point of that whole thing. That's the trinity of how I look at a house. And so because Mercury is ruling the eighth house, my eighth house is pretty strong because I got a strong Mercury because it has two mutual receptions with Venus and with Moon, right? And those are both strong mutual receptions. uh, one by domicile, one by exaltation and domicile, at least domicile on one side of things. So my 8th house is strong, and so my astrology, psychology, ability to see beneath the surface of things, dive deep into things. I did have a monetary inheritance from my grandparents, although that's running out. The Jupiter is drying up. Jupiter's south node is a blessing and a curse at the same time. It's a blessing because it gives tremendous knowledge and wisdom and Jupiterian philosophical, spiritual kind of understanding, especially for me as it relates to practicality, Taurian things, food, and relating to connecting to other people. Like, I'm very generous with other people, especially in personal relationships, not so much with the public, but that's a different story. If you know me just as a public figure, I could be pretty mean and ruthless at times, or at least apparently so. But if you meet me one-on-one, like if you get a reading with me, I'm very different. I'm very Jupiterian. But for myself, there's not much Jupiter because number one, it's in the 7th house. Number two, it's conjunct South Node. And South Node creates that old familiarity, the wisdom, with Jupiter. It's a spiritual quality, but it's not a material placement sign. Point. South Node. It's not. It's immaterial. It's more spiritual and creates a more spiritualization. But Jupiter is the great benefic. Jupiter brings gifts and success and abundance, especially in Taurus. But South Node conjunct Jupiter dries it up as you get older. So all the Taurian things are drying up for me. Relationships, money, luxury. And it's like I'm becoming like Scorpio, independent, fierce, right? And psychological, like understanding all this astrology, psychology stuff. Like, so yeah. That's like how you would read that. What else? I mean, yeah, finance. So finance is not only Jupiter's in Taurus, but Jupiter's also ruling the 2nd house, right? And with Uranus, not Uranus, Neptune here, like really finances are not so good, right? And if I could have a partner, but it's not well indicated, it's not well aspected, although Jupiter mitigates somewhat that. Jupiter wants to give benefits, but South Node sucks out the benefits. So it's like this, if I could find myself a healthy, good relationship, then the finances could improve. But as long as I'm alone, it tends to lean more towards the sparsity of Scorpio. Scorpio really wants to live on the edge. It's not abundant and excessive and materially secure like Taurus. Scorpio is all about like just like the sheer I don't know, like gritty clawing nature of life. It's about extremes, it's about crisis, it's about spiritual growth and transformation and desires, and it tends to leave people out in the cold. It's very powerful. It can lead to power, it can lead to shared resources, but it depends, right? It depends. There has to be that relation. It is a relational sign, but in the first house is much, it's really about the self. So it's kind of a difficult placement, North Node in the first. I mean, Uranus is not much consolation because Uranus is not a personal planet. It's not like Venus or Mars or Mercury or anything like that, Jupiter, right? Uranus is the great awakener. It's not really there to console you. It's there to shake you up and slap you around and wake you up and bring incredible awareness. I mean, for astrology, it's fantastic, right? I think what's his name? David Wolf Green. the evolutionary astrologer, he had North Node in conjunct Uranus in the 8th, right? So I have it in the first in Scorpio. So definitely astrology, psychology, awareness, awakening, spirituality, Satori, that sort of thing is all there. But this is not a comfortable, cushy position at all, right? And so you'd have to look what's near the North Node, what's near the South Node. But this personal planets are near the South Node, Jupiter and Mercury, friends, benefit, luxury, girlfriends, all that, right? South Node is also activating Venus. So huge, you know, activation early in life. And then later in life, it's like, okay, you've had your playtime's over. Now it's time to get down to work, right? So North Node is very important to look at wherever it is. North Node in the first house. North Node on the angles are particularly difficult because it's a very destructive position. A lot of people with North Node in the first or North Node in the 7th, they have a difficult, a lot of success potentially, but destructiveness brings a lot of destructiveness because the nodes are they are quite destructive, especially when young. They can be potentially. I mean, Jupiter, if you have it with Jupiter, Jupiter is going to protect it. But a lot of these, like the rock stars and famous people with the nodes on the angles, especially first and 7th, they have quite destructive lives. I mean, I could think of a number of people. Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Sid Vicious, Amy Winehouse. These 4 people, they have the most destructive lives. They all have their angles like North Node, South Node, and it was different. Sid Vicious and Amy Winehouse have it like me, even more close to the ascendant, and then Jim Morrison and Janis Joplin have the reverse, but still. Then I look at the moon, right? Because the moon is the inner mind and the heart, the emotions, the emotional satisfaction, how the person becomes emotionally satisfied. I have a Virgo moon, so I'm very critical. It's in the 11th house, so 11th house likes to think big about society. It likes to be involved in groups and networks. Virgo's the critic, so critical about society, a social critic. I'm a social critic, right? I look at politics and I look at the state of the world and I'm like, that's where my mind goes. And I'm like, okay, I have all these ideas and criticisms of that, right? Obviously you got to look at the relationship between, any of the planets in the ascendant, right? These are in the 8th house. They're not making a direct aspect to the ascendant. It's making an aspect to the nodes, but the ascendant is more critical. Moon is making a slight semi-square to the ascendant. And so, even though Moon in the 11th house is good for career success and, tends to gain benefit from the mother, there's still some tension there with the semi-square. And Virgo is quite critical anyway. So Virgo is not like a soft, cushy sign. It creates a lot of tension in itself because of its exacting nature. It wants perfection. It wants to be very critical. It wants to be very hardworking and academic. And the semi-square shows that, there's tension there, it's not like a super, it's not an unhappy moon, but it's not like a super, jovial, positive, it's not like a 9th house Cancer moon, that would be really nice, caring, sweet, loving person, right? This is kind of critical, tense, it gains some nice benefit from Jupiter and Mercury, but these are 7th house also in South Node. And remember, South Node is kind of drying these things up. So like definitely Moon is missing out in this North Node period. We're much happier with friends and relationships and the comfort of Taurus when I was younger because of the trine there, right? And it's not that it's unhappy, it's just that the south node is not physical, it's spiritual. So it's in a sense saying like, for my satisfaction, I have to become more spiritual, and develop spiritual relationships instead of material, physical ones. So yeah, and then so there's those trines and the semi-square. What else? There's a sun-moon square. That's important. You want to look at the relationship between the sun and the moon. The square definitely shows some tension, parental tension, sun and the moon, mother and father. Definitely mother and father divorced when I was young. And this is a waxing moon, so building first quarter shows like a tension, difficulty, hard work in building, creating something in my life. I forget exactly how they put it. They give different terms for the different stages, but squares are not really bad. They're just not easy. They create a lot of hard work. So this is like, a difficult, hard work kind of situation. It's past the square. It's, it's past 15 degrees. So it's like, hopefully the hardest part is over. But it's like building my life, right? I have to struggle a bit to build my life and to gain satisfaction, as well as with the ascendant, right? And then I would also look to the relationship between the house ruler, right, which is Mercury. Again, Mercury is dispositing my sun and my moon and my Venus, so it's an important planet for me. And then so there's a good relationship here, not so much with the sun, right? Sun to Mercury, it's kind of like not great. So what does that mean? Well, sun being the bright light, the personality, the star quality. If it's not in good relationship to Mercury, its ruler, and it's being in the 8th house, probably means I'm not going to be, fame is probably not going to come to me easily, right? Even though I kind of want to be famous with my ascendant lord in Leo conjunct the MC, and that's why I like making videos. It's going to be difficult, and my expression is not super flowing easily. I'm good at expressing my emotions and my heart, but the personality, the sun, has a bit of a tense aspect with the Mercury. So that's why I stumble somewhat on my words. It doesn't come out very smoothly, but I can be emotionally effective. Right? That's the difference. Like when I can impart some feeling. I can express my heart because there's a pretty good relationship there. It's the trine and it's a mutual reception. So that's quite strong. Jupiter and Moon are also trine, and that's quite good. Jupiter does not like Virgo, really, so it's not so good for Jupiter, but good for Moon because Moon likes Taurus. Moon is exalted in Taurus. So let me take that back. It is good. Moon is bonifying Jupiter. Jupiter is not bonifying Moon. Right. So yeah, I think it was reverse. So yeah. Yeah, much better for Mercury than Jupiter, but I mean much better for Mercury and Moon than Jupiter and Moon, but still somewhat. Yeah, Moon bonifies the Jupiter. Then I would look at, so let me go back. Sorry, jumping around a little bit. So this Mercury is good at expressing the Moon and socially views. I mean, I can get, because my Moon is in the 11th house, groups, networks, social issues, political stuff. I am quite moved about that, and I can become very emotionally, Virgo Moon is not going to be sentimental, but it can be quite charged up about these things in a very critical way. And so I don't know if you've noticed, but like social issues, I can get like very emotionally impassioned and express that quite effectively when it happens, when it comes out. Right. So that's how you look at that. You look at the relationship between the sun and the moon, and then the ascendant as well, and the ascendant lord. So let's look at the ascendant. Scorpio ascendant, Uranus conjunct the ascendant, and then North Node. This is going to be much stronger now that I'm past 42. I'm 46, right? Uranus is retrograde, so lots of rebellion. And, you know, even when I was younger, the rebellion, I was too rebellious, and that's not always, you know, I mean, that it's good and bad, really, because if you're too rebellious, then you don't fit in with society very well, because you're rebelling against everything. And that was always my problem. I couldn't accept anything, and I still can't accept anything about society. I'm just like, you know, if I'm going to be honest, it's just like, you know, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, like to everything, you know. I mean, that's basically Uranus just like denies everything and just is like, I'm gonna thank you very much, I'm gonna figure it out all on my own, I don't need you because you're stupid, right? That sort of thing. And you know, when it's you know, that strong, it's like, well, how am I ever gonna operate in this world if I'm just like rejecting everything, you know, with a vengeance, you know. Uranus in Scorpio is pretty strong. It's considered exalted, right? So I have this very strong awareness, right? Like I was always very like way back, you know, way before any of this Great Awakening stuff. I was, you know, my friends thought I was pretty crazy because I would say all kinds of stuff that, you know, they were unaware of, that I was very aware of, and like, you know, I was very anti-government, very anti-corporation, very anti-everything. I didn't trust any of it, and I was right, you know, and I was way ahead of the curve on all that stuff. You know, it's not like I just woke up like, you know, about all the corruption. I knew it was like way back, you know. So that's very Uranian, very independent, you know, scorpionic, you know, spirituality, it's Satori, enlightenment, all that stuff is very near and dear to me on a very personal level. But Uranus conjunct the ascendant, any planets that conjunct the ascendant, it's going to affect the looks, the face, especially as a person gets older, and the behavior and the body and the overall everything. It's going to affect everything. The ascendant is so important. It influences just the whole chart. And you have to look at what house. I mean, Uranus obviously is the co-ruler of Aquarius. That would be my fourth house. So my upbringing is, there's something unique about my upbringing, and that's true. You know, Saturn would be the other ruler, but definitely a lot of my awareness came from my upbringing. I'm not going to go too into that, but my parents were way ahead of the curve with a lot of, you know, what they did. My father started the first health food store in Philadelphia. They were very aware about health and food and spirituality. And they taught me about all kinds of things: yin and yang, 5 transformations, 9 key Japanese astrology. And that's where I got my initial understanding for all this stuff. Really understanding archetypes, understanding how energy works, understanding how to interpret different archetypes. And, you know, there's many different ways to look at these things. I mean, there's, like I just said, there's the yin and yang dialectic, which is archetypal. There's the 5 transformations, which are unique. That's Far Eastern philosophy. It's different from this stuff. Then there's 9 key. Then there's 10 heavenly stems and 12 earthly branches, which is Chinese, 4 pillars. Then there's the Vedic, which I also study, and then Western astrology, which I also study. And so that all that is very, you know, Uranian type awareness, just like very high knowledge. And in Scorpio, it does quite well, because Scorpio is like the depth. Aquarius or Uranus is like the expansion, and so it's good polarity there. That's why it makes so much sense. And they both lend themselves to astrology. Uranus is the archetype of astrology, the planetary archetype, and Scorpio also very much related to the deep secrets of the occult knowledge, right? And so your North Node conjunct Uranus, it's a little wide, but it's 9 degrees, so it's not bad. That shows that I really have to learn this. I really have to become obsessive. I am obsessive about psychology and astrology and awareness and my own spirituality. And it doesn't leave much room for relationships because there's no personal planets here. It's quite alone. If North Node is not surrounded by personal planets, you might be alone. You might tend to be a lot more alone, not necessarily completely alone, but a lot more alone. Especially when South Node's in the 7th. But then I would look at the aspects. Uranus has a square to Saturn, and that's even more rebellious, not only because Uranus is retrograde, but the square to Saturn's authority figures, and so that tends to be rebellious against authority, which I always was, and still am, and always will be in this life anyway, right? And then the nodes are square Mars, which is Mars is the ascendant lord and the 6th house lord. So that's quite conflictual, right? That creates a lot of tension and hard work, and shows that I have to work hard at this Mars and Leo conjunct the MC, which is basically putting myself out there on video, obsessing about astrology, and I'm not going to gain recognition, easily, because my sun is hidden. I don't have a great relationship between Sun and Mercury. My authority is not great because Saturn, it represents my authority. It is here in the 10th house, or 10th whole sign house, ninth quadrant, but it's not in great dignity because it's in Leo, opposite Aquarius. It's domicile. So it's not great dignity here. So I don't have a lot of authority. People don't want to listen to me, which is like very annoying for me because I want them to listen to me, but they won't. It's like, why won't you listen to me? But Saturn in Leo is quite, it can be quite harsh and hard because it's too hot, especially conjunct Mars. Mars likes it because it gains focus from Saturn. Mars is exalted in the Saturn sign of Capricorn, but Saturn likes to be more cool and soft and wet with Venus, and Libra, right? Doesn't like to be hard because then it becomes like, do what I say, damn it. And nobody likes that. Dictatorial is the tyrannical, and I'm aware of that. So I try not to be, but I mean, I certainly could be, certainly can be. Especially with Mars there, it's like, and Leo, Mars and Leo, and then the Saturn and Leo, and conjunct the MC, it's like, you should watch me when I get angry. It's like, I'm not going to demonstrate for you here, but it's, get out the popcorn. It's a show in itself, right? And the square, so Mars is the ascendant lord, it's conjunct the MC, so it's like, I constantly want to assert myself and my authority, my aggression, my power, my masculinity, right? Mars and Leo, to the top, right? And I don't really, it's like, I'm not going to really, there's a lot of confidence here in this because it's just like Uranus in Scorpio conjunct the ascendant really doesn't give a shit what anyone thinks, and then Mars, and then it's not just conjunct, there's North Node here. So like as I get older, it's like so much like personal force in myself, right? And that's why I'm like I just make these videos and I'm just like, fuck you, right? Like I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm trying not to be arrogant. It's not like I want to be arrogant, but it's like this is what I need to do. It's like I have to do this. Like Leo's the ego, the pride, fame. Mars is the ascendant lord, and it's square the nodes. Square the nodes shows that it's like I have to do it, right? and it's conjunct the MC. It's like the highest. It's like you can't get more. I mean, I guess square the ascendant would be like 3 degrees Leo. So both these planets, Mars and Saturn, and right, Mars becomes very focused with Saturn because Saturn wants to control Mars. So like a controlled Mars is a good Mars. Like you don't want a reckless Mars. Like Mars in Cancer is just like wild and violent, operating out of emotions. Saturn controls Mars. Not good for Saturn, but it's good for Mars. Good for Mars in a way, not great for Mars. Mars is better in Capricorn because Mars and Saturn together can be quite violent. I'm not violent, but there's definitely that potential there that I have to control myself, obviously. But this is a pretty intense, strong position, and it makes me angry when people cross me. It's like I really assert myself, and publicly, and I'll, it's like sometimes I can't believe like I'm yelling at people publicly. Like that's the sort of thing. It's like, I'll yell at people in the streets, like a guy just like littered right in front of me, just like, opened up his like a big wrapper and just tossed it. I'm like, I yelled at him, and I'm not going to say what I said, but like, that's the kind of thing. I don't think about it. I just do it. Like I stand up, like, and that's Leo also. Leo is very honor bound, and will fight for pride and honor, and Mars does okay in Leo. And then so you want to look at the ascendant. So obviously, let's retrace. Planets in the ascendant, aspects to the ascendant itself, and aspects to the planets in the ascendant, and then aspects to the planet to the ascendant lord, or position of the ascendant lord, and then aspects to the ascendant lord, right? So that's how you would analyze that. And then relation also to the dispositor of the ascendant lord. So this is the sun. It's a nice sextile. So actually Mars is sextile the sun, and so that is quite good for the sun, because sun conjunct Venus can be quite lazy. For instance, like Aleister Crowley has Sun conjunct Venus in Libra. And what's Aleister Crowley's philosophy? Do what thou wilt, which is totally a Venusian philosophy. It's just like eat, drink, have sex, take money from other people, do whatever you want, no consequences. That's all Venus, a very strong Venus. Sun is weak, Venus is strong. So he has no honor. He has no pride. He has no it's all about indulgence with Aleister Crowley. It's do whatever, do drugs, have sex with everyone, right? Just be completely indulgent. And Venus also has a relationship to what is known as Lucifer. In the morning star phase, it's considered Lucifer. When it's rising above the sun, when it's on this side of the sun, it's considered Lucifer, because it's young, immature, and indulgent, right? And that's the nature of Lucifer. Lucifer is all about Satanism. Lucifer, it's all about the ego, right? And so that's why, somebody with Sun conjunct Venus in Libra, where the sun is debilitated and Venus is very strong. You understand? Venus is strong, Sun's weak. They lose their pride, their honor, and they become totally indulgent, and they become Luciferian. So that's why he was satanic, right? So Mars is in the sign of Leo, so Mars is becoming very honor bound, very prideful, but it's also sextile the sun. So I'm not lazy. I get up at 5 a.m. every morning. I do a full body rub. I walk 3 times a day. I do pull-ups. I do push-ups. That's the good relationship with Mars, and it also helps that Mars is the ascendant lord. Mars is the 6th house lord. Also, being the 6th house lord means that I publicly have conflicts, and that unfortunately is true. I always bring conflicts into the public realm, into my work life, and not a great thing. I just attract that. I get in fights easily with people, always have, and it's problematic. Unfortunately, I have to really be self-controlled, right? But if you have a good relationship between Sun and Mars, or in this case, ascendant lord and sun, that's good. If you're ascendant lord, these are two aspects of the self, right? And sun, ascendant lord is in the sign of the sun, and it's sextile the sun. So that it's not a mutual reception, but sun is bonifying the ascendant lord. And just in general, ascendant lord and sun healthy relationship is excellent. If Mars is in healthy relationship to Venus, that creates great physicality and great passion and sex appeal and yeah, all that. And like I said, in the past, that was much more, I'm not trying to brag or anything. It was much more relevant in the past when my South Node was more active. I mean, less so now, but in any case, I'm not going to talk about that. But yeah, that can create great physicality. Saturn conjunct Mars will not create great physicality because Saturn restricts and starves wherever it touches. So I have good physicality, not great physicality. Saturn limits and restricts that because Saturn is a planet, Capricorn is a sign. So Mars is exalted in the sign of Capricorn. It's strengthened somewhat by Saturn, but also weakened because these are two malefics. So that's why Mars conjunct Saturn can be violent and very aggressive, but it does create certain kind of strength. But if Mars and Saturn are conjunct, or Mars and Venus are conjunct or in good aspect, then it's excellent physicality, right? Like The Rock, they can just build up their body. I can't build up my body like that. I'll get hurt. I can do moderate exercise and I keep myself fit, but I can't go over. I really have to limit it. I'll get nerve pain, bone pain, my knees hurt. Also, I'm prone to accidents. I mean, that's Uranus conjunct the ascendant. If any of the outer planets are conjunct the ascendant, it's good, it's strong, it's powerful, but it's also bad, right? If it's Neptune conjunct the ascendant, that can be drugs and alcohol. That's Marilyn Monroe, exotic, right? Glamour. You have to be very evolved to have a healthy relationship with Neptune conjunct the ascendant, and then you can be very spiritual. But if not, it's very difficult. Uranus too. Accidents, sun things. If it's Pluto, that's power, control, abuse. Pluto can be very destructive, right? And these people can be very destructive towards themselves, and they can be abusive. And you cannot control Pluto, wherever Pluto is. So if Pluto's conjunct the ascendant, you will never control these people. These people will self-destruct or destroy you or whatever, right? Pluto is also the ascendant, the secondary ascendant lord for Scorpio, because it's the co-ruler. It's in the 12th, and it's has a nice trine to Venus, not too close, a little further from the sun, but that's quite good, especially for astrology. Brings in deep psychological awareness. 8th house, 12th house. That's good. So if you have one of the signs that has dual ownership, dual rulership, then look at both of them. One will be the physical ruler, the other will be the energetic spiritual ruler, right? So if it's Aquarius, you look first to Saturn for the physical ruler, then Uranus for the kind of more spiritual or energetic ruler, and Scorpio and Pisces, right, with Neptune and Jupiter. Yeah, what else? Like I said, I'm not going to go too deep into every single aspect. I'm just trying to get on the main things of how I do it. Like house, you would look, right? What planets are in the house? What aspects are the planets making? What planets are making aspect to those planets, or the cusp, right? Especially the angles, and then the ruler. Where's the ruler, and what aspects are being made to the ruler, right? And then you can do that with each house. So the second house, how are my finances? How's my voice? And Neptune doesn't create a bad voice. I used to sing, right? So there's a semi-sextile to the nodes. I don't pay that much attention to that. But then we see Neptune to Venus, Neptune opposite Venus. That's not great for finances, but oh, Neptune to Mars. I forgot about that. Yeah, so that's the trines will show skills and talents, something that comes very easy, right? So there is a strong connection with Neptune, and that's good for video, right? Because Neptune is glamour, creativity, film, cinema, that sort of thing. Also mysticism, spirituality. So it aids in all that. It's in the second house, so my voice, I guess, apparently is working for my ascendant lord in a good way. Speaking. So there's a harmonious connection there. In conjunct to South Node. Some interesting that because money was good when I was younger. And if you look at the what is it? In any case, there's a seventh aspect exact between Neptune and Jupiter. So that's interesting. I mean, if you want to get more detailed, you can look that up, but that's more involved. But yeah, so then the ruler is Jupiter, and then you look to the aspects of that to check out how the second house is. So Neptune, the aspects to Neptune, then the ruler, Jupiter in the seventh. So finances are related to relationships, and not just personal relationship, but also like readings, right? Like I can do astrology readings, and then that will bring in money. And then what are the aspects to Jupiter? South Node, obviously. And then South Node Jupiter, when young, just if you want to know, will bring a teacher and teacher like people. And then when older, no teacher, right? It just doesn't work. It doesn't work for me to have a teacher. I have to learn on my own. My teacher is like just reading charts and watching videos. And, I kind of wish I had a teacher, but it just doesn't work out that way. It's like, it kind of repulses me. When I've tried to have a teacher, it's like a South Node tends to repulse. It's like going back to high school once you graduated. It's that kind of feeling. It's like been there, done that. Like, what am I doing here? I can't do this. Like, get me out of here, right? After you graduated something, after you finished, that's what South Node is. And so there's a natural repulsion for those sort of things. So that's why I can't have a teacher. It's like that energetic disharmony, dissonance, right? And then Jupiter has a trine to Moon, so that's so then 11th house also is finances as well, career success, finances. So Moon or mother or like motherly figures could be good for finances, right? And then Jupiter has what else? Jupiter has a little bit of a square to Mars, which is not great, but so then there's some tension between Mars and perhaps my aggression will get in the way of my finances, right? If I'm getting into fights with somebody, that could be harmful to my finances. So you can look at it that way. And then third house, there's no planets, but Saturn rules the third house, right? And Saturn is here, 9th quadrant, 10th whole sign house. So writing and grad school or writing in public, intellect, short distance travel, driving. Saturn often deals with career. So I could drive as a career or I could write as a career, but Saturn's not in great dignity. So I'm probably not going to enjoy it. I'm probably not going to be very good at it. Like if it's writing, no. I mean, I can write, but I don't like it. It takes a lot of work. Gemini, obviously, It's good with words, but it's not harmonious, right? And so Saturn is not great for me. Third house, intellect. I'm not, even though I have a strong Mercury, I'm not an academic. I'm not an intellectual. I'm not good at grad school. Like I went to grad school. It's not like I can't do it. It's like I don't like it, and it just like grinds me, right? Because this Saturn, and Saturn is also going to restrict my career. It's going to make it much harder for me because it's not good dignity. It's going to restrict, delay. Like as I get older, it'll become better, but definitely a lot of restriction there. So third house, no, fourth house, also not great because Saturn, although Uranus is quite good, but Uranus is not material. So then there's an energetic connection with the fourth house, but not a physical. Fifth house, Jupiter, and Neptune. So possibly I could make some money with speculative investments, fifth house, right? But let's see, fun, games, all that, it comes from relationships, but it's all dried up because of South Node and spirituality. So fifth house, romance, fun, games, entertainment, performance, all of, even children. I have a son, but I love my son, and he's a treasure. Relationships is not that easy. I wish it was. It just doesn't work out that way, right? So that, and so you can keep going. Sixth house, Mars. Okay, Mars is leading to job, is leading to career. Like jobs, very public. Rising in job, a lot of pride, ego, and so job is not easy because in a job you have to be an underling, right? But with my Mars there and very prideful Leo, it's like I want to be the boss, and I probably should be the boss, but it's difficult. Saturn's here. Saturn's restrictive. Mars comes underneath Saturn because Saturn is the boss, and Mars is, there's a conflict here, right? Conflict with the self, conflict with job, because it's like Saturn is the ceiling, Saturn is the law, Saturn is the authority. Mars wants to rise above Saturn, but Saturn's like, get in your place, boy, learn your, but it's very difficult because Mars is actually stronger than Saturn here, right? And Mars is in Leo. Mars is the ascendant lord. So this is me. This is my boss, and this is me fighting with my boss. So that's not good for work, right? A lot of tension there. So you can see some difficulties in my chart, obviously, but it's going to take a lot of work for me. Any case, but you just keep going around like that, like so like ninth house, like my higher education, philosophy, religion. Well, that's going into the 11th house, career, success, groups, networks. So like philosophy translates into sort of community or social outlook, social outlook on life. Like religion for me is having concern for society, right? That's kind of like my philosophy in life. Well, it tends to go that way. It's not like a conscious thing. You also have to look at Jupiter, right? And South Node Jupiter tends to be, it's not great. It can lead to depression even though there's a lot of inherent wisdom and knowledge. South Node can suck up the jovialness of Jupiter. But I do find myself in groups and networks, internet, that sort of thing, and concern with society. And that's bringing in the ninth house element, right? And then 10th house is Saturn, Mars, and then disposited by Sun. There's tension between Sun and Saturn, but sextile between Mars and Sun and Venus. So that's good. So it's 8th house, again, astrology, career, right? 11th house, we'd already did that, Mercury. 12th house, Venus, and that's actually pretty good, 12th house. Mystical, creative stuff, and then psychological, Pluto, right? So yeah. I think that's it. Oh, I will show you my true face now. My true face. My draconic chart. It's the true face. It's my who I am underneath. Is my spiritual, and it's pretty unique. Look, I got Sun in Scorpio conjunct Uranus, right? And so that's, you want to look at the sun, you want to look at the moon, you want to look at any conjunctions or anything that really stands out, stelliums. So I got my Sun in Scorpio conjunct Uranus, conjunct the ascendant. So this is very strong, right? I mean, it's like scorpionic, iconic, Uranian type stuff is kind of what I'm here for, which is astrology, very much. Psychology, understanding people, understanding people's motivations, all the Scorpio stuff. Also transformation, self-transformation, the ascendant, conquering my desires, awakening, spirituality, ascending, all that. Full-on 12th house stellium in Libra, right? Venus is just at the 29th degree in Libra, about to lose dignity, but still holding on to some, and bonifying all these planets with Pluto here. Pluto also very psychological, very, deep thinking. And then it's, being aided by Jupiter, Mercury, Pallas, Venus. So a lot of, spiritual, psychological, deep, mystical thinking, astrology type stuff, right? Got some second house activation here with Saturn, MC, and Mars. So speaking, teaching, philosophizing in a Saturnian, Martian kind of way, authority, and Mars is my ascendant lord. Aquarius moon. Aquarius also relates to astrology, as well as home is where the heart is, right? Moon conjunct the descendant, happy at home, being an Aquarian, doing astrology. Pluto in Aquarius as well. Ascendant in Pisces, and Uranus in Pisces. So again, spiritual, mystical. And I am, you might not know it up front, but I am quite spiritually oriented. I always have been. So Neptune conjunct Chiron, conjunct the descendant. Again, I mean, talk about relationships. I've had some pretty extreme relationships with people, also chironic, and also drug, alcohol type people who are lost, especially one woman who died, Mary, unfortunately. But that is very relevant. And then a lot of 11th house activation here as well. Descendant in Chiron, descending conjunct moon shows that my moon, number one, it shows caring and concern for others, but also that for my emotional satisfaction, I want relationships. And it's true. I become very dissatisfied being so alone, but at the same time, it's not there. If it's not there, it's not there. And but the other thing is that readings, when I do astrology readings, that's also relationships. So that does satisfy that. So in any case, I mean, yeah, if you're ever doubting my astrological potential or inclinations, I mean, this is very, very strong for being an astrologer, right? Sun in Scorpio conjunct the ascendant, conjunct Uranus, North Node not too far away. In any case, that's how I read a chart. And I probably forgot some stuff, but that's the bulk of it. And I hope you find it interesting. And if you did, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment down below, say whatever you like. Just be nice. And book a reading with me. My website is macroastrology.com. My email is macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. And I'll see you again soon. All right, thank you. Bye.